Welcome to the GPISH application admissions webinar. So this webinar will be specifically about the GPISH program. If you have any questions specifically about the application process, then please join us next week. This webinar is being recorded, so you can access it on our YouTube channel in a couple of days' time. If you miss it, or if you know anybody else who can't make it today and would like to see it later on. So I'll start with introductions. My name is Rakiza Kant. I'm Assistant Manager of Student Services. We have Kate here, who's Student Services Manager. We've got Alex Henley, who is the Program Leader for GPISH, who will be delivering this webinar today. And we've also got two students here, Fatima and Moes, who will be giving you their perspectives on their time on the GPISH program. So I'm handing over now to Alex.
Excellent. Thank you, Rakiza, and welcome, everyone. What we want to do with this session is, first, I'll walk you through basically what GPISH is, some general information about it, try and kind of explain a little around what you'll see on the website, and tell you why I think it's a great program and the IES is a great place to study. That will take maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'll pass over to Fatima and Moes, who can give you their a bit of their perspective as current and recent students. And we'll take questions at the end, but please feel free to start putting the questions in the Q&A box, and they'll pile up while we're going, and we can go through them at the end. So. First, what is GPISH? The basics. It's a 2-year master's in Islamic Studies and Humanities. It's for Ismaili students in particular, and fairly crucially for many people, it's supported by a full scholarship that covers all of your living costs and accommodation for the 2 years. And it's a master's validated by SOAS University of London. You might have heard of SOAS. It's a world leader in the study of Asian and African cultures and politics. So it's kind of a big brand to be associated with. What that validation means in practice is that at the end of the 2 years, you get a certificate, a master's certificate from SOAS, marked with the SOAS and IES stamps. You get access to the world-famous library at SOAS, and they guarantee that the quality and standards of the courses we offer at the IES are basically the same as those at SOAS. So they follow the same processes to make sure that that what we're offering is equivalent to their courses, which are really kind of world-class. But all of the teaching is actually done at the IES by IES faculty. So it's very much an IES program. And GPISH is well known, I think, as the flagship program of the IES. It embodies what I would say are the 3 kind of prongs of the IES mission: to preserve Ismaili heritage and promote the study of that heritage, to generate knowledge of Islam and Muslim societies, knowledge that's more balanced and nuanced than other stuff out there. And thirdly, to invest in Ismaili communities worldwide through the intellectual development of their people. So what do we mean then by Islamic Studies and Humanities? It's a slightly odd juxtaposition of these two terms. We don't see them as separate components. The idea is that they're combined into what you could call Islamic humanities, or a liberal arts program rooted in Islamic civilization, where you study the history, thought, literature, artistic production, and all sorts of other things of Muslim societies is the idea. A few things about the way we do it at the IES. We don't teach Islam as an abstract set of doctrines or beliefs. We take a humanistic civilizational approach to studying Islam. That means studying Islam through its diverse expressions in Muslim societies and cultures, as those cultures have changed and adapted to different times and places. And you can read a bit more on the website about what we mean by that humanistic civilizational approach, but really it's key to what we do. And in the process, we apply the tools of the various disciplines of the humanities and the social sciences. So the idea is that you learn to see social dynamics through various lenses and to analyze ideas from multiple perspectives. And fourth on this little list you see on the slide is that at the IES, we're committed to being both empathetic and critical in our study of Muslims. And I think that's quite important compared to some other institutions. This kind of study is supposed to challenge our preconceptions. So it can feel quite personally challenging to many, and it raises difficult questions for debate. But here we do it as a community of believers and empathetic allies, I'd say. And finally, last but not least, I should say, our approach to Islamic studies places a unique emphasis on Ismaili and broader Shi'i traditions, traditions that are neglected at lots of other universities and in mainstream Islamic studies globally. So that's obviously key to what the IES is about, but we see the diversity of traditions as really integral to Islam, and that's why we don't separate between Ismaili studies and Islamic studies. They go together in what the IES wants to do. And in the course that we want to take you through. So let's get into a bit more detail on the program. Here you see an outline of the modules that you do over the course of 2 years at the IES. This shows the overall structure. There are 18 modules in total, and you can read more about these on the website. So for now, what I want to do is point out some general features that I think are important to understand. So first, it's very wide-ranging, as you see here. It gives you the broadest possible familiarity with the features of Muslim societies across the world history. You explore issues of diversity and change from multiple disciplinary perspectives. And in terms of kind of how the program takes shape over the 2 years, in the first year, so the left-hand side of this is the first year, the right-hand side is the second year. In the first year, you get an overview of Muslim history. You see how various traditions have emerged over the early centuries, especially. And meanwhile, you get a grounding in academic approaches to Islam, including historiographical debates, which means basically how history is written, contextual analysis of scriptures, as in Quran, Hadith, and so on, and how they've been interpreted over the centuries, and also in anthropological study of religious practices and identities. So the first year kind of lays these foundations, and in the second year, you go on to focus on particular dimensions of Islamic civilization, you could say. Ethical dimensions, legal, philosophical, artistic, literary, that kind of thing, across time in each of those modules. And throughout all of this, most students learn Arabic for 2 years. So everyone learns a language. By default, you'll be learning Arabic. The idea being that you can access the key source texts of Islam, and also learn to communicate in what is ultimately, for better or worse, the lingua franca, the common language of so many Muslim cultures. If you already speak Arabic, then you take Persian instead, but Arabic is the default. So that's a bit about kind of the content of this. Go away and read more. But a couple of broader notes about how this program works in practice. You follow a set sequence of modules. So you don't choose among these modules, you do all of these modules. But within that, there's a lot of flexibility to explore your own interests. More than half of the assignments that you do over the course of these 2 years are kind of open to choose the topic that you want, and you discuss with the person teaching the module how to formulate a little research project along the lines that you're interested in most on that topic. And that kind of leads up to the dissertation at the end. Dissertation, sometimes called a thesis. The dissertation is a piece of writing of 10,000 words, which will be the culmination of the 2-year masters. And it's based on a field research project that you can do anywhere in the world. You get training in research methods. You get an individual supervisor to guide you in doing that project. And you get some funds to pay for your travel wherever you want to go. Some examples of recent research projects that GPISH students have done, including one by Fatima, who's going to talk to us in a little bit. But this maybe gives you a kind of a taster of really the extraordinary range of interests that GPISH students have pursued and the kind of the options available to you to do research in fascinating places and really focus on anything you want kind of within the scope of the study of Muslim societies broadly defined. So there's plenty of scope in there for flexibility to make this program your own. I should also say it is really intensive. We pack a lot into these 2 years so that you can get this kind of breadth, a breadth that you'd otherwise only really be able to get maybe over the course of like a 3-year degree somewhere else. But the idea is that the scholarship pays for your, covers your living costs and enables you to live without the distractions of a job on the side and all that kind of thing. So the scholarship enables you to focus all of your time and energy on your studies for these 2 years, and we want to make it really worth your while. So alongside the academic program, those master's modules that lead to this qualification that you get, we have various supporting activities. I've kind of listed the main ones here, which are really about supporting you with the skills that you need to do this well, and also kind of adding on to the classroom activities some things that will bring the subject to life and give you more hands-on experience of what the study of Muslim cultures is really, what it really means in the real world beyond the ivory tower of academia. So this list includes all sorts of different things, but to whiz through them quickly, we start off with a pre-sessional crash course in academic skills that's designed to help you bridge from previous studies. Lots of people come to GPISH from very different fields, not necessarily with a background in the humanities or social sciences. So the idea is over the course of these 4 weeks before you start your MA program, we kind of onboard you with these ways of working, these ideas a little. And once you're on the program, you get training in research methods, which I mentioned before, building up to the dissertation, and support for the field research in your second year. There are a couple of other travel elements that are seen as quite key to the kind of the cross-cultural experience you get through GPISH. One is language immersion. So alongside all those language classes that you do at the IAS, you go and spend a month over the summer in the middle ideally, where possible, we send you to go and study in a country where you can speak that language to people around you. So that's usually Jordan for Arabic. For Persian these days, it's a little more difficult to find places to send students safely, but we figure that out year by year. So as well as this month of language immersion, we also have a trip to Spain, which is about a week in the second year, but it's quite an interesting cultural heritage tour of Islamic heritage sites from the period of Al-Andalus, to think about how Islamic culture has impacted Europe. We don't tend to, it's so easy to kind of set up a binary opposite, Europe and the West versus Islamic civilizations. But this trip around the cultural heritage of Spain is a chance to see the crossovers and the interconnections, and that's quite exciting too. The last few points on this list. Oh, in fact, this picture here, of course, is in Spain, taken in the Grand Mosque of Cordoba. I should note these are not actually GPISH students, slight cheats. These are STEP students who also have this trip, but I thought it was a fun picture. The last few points on this list are kind of general skills building activities. We have a week dedicated to leadership and careers skills at the beginning of the second year. And we support an annual student conference, which was started last year by some really enterprising GPISH students who got together with STEP and other students to organize this fantastic conference, which has become an annual institution. The next one is coming up this week on Wednesday. So there's plenty of stuff going on supporting the classroom activities. And hopefully it leads you on a path to allow you to forge a career of your own choice, to make this Islamic studies, humanities education relevant to whatever you want to do. And on this slide here, you see some statistics about where GPISH alumni have gone. On the right-hand side, we've kind of broken down broadly the area, the sectors of work that GPISH alums have gone into, and there are a lot who continue in academic careers and go on to PhDs, for instance, and research work. Equally, many who focus on teaching, and often kind of a combination of research and teaching in different ways, but also all sorts of other fields. And ultimately, the vast majority of GPISH alumni find ways of forging a career that gives back to society in some meaningful way. And that's something really quite special about GPISH, I think, that so many of our students are looking for ways to make their studies, make their lives, make their careers really of value to those around them as well as themselves. And part of that is contributions to Ismaili institutions. So kind of a cross-section of these different areas of work are kind of overlap with Jamati and Imamat institutions. So about 34% of GPISH alumni are currently working in Imamat and Jamati institutions in all sorts of different roles. Now, at the IES, we can help you a little in finding your path beyond GPISH. We have a few progression opportunities at the IES. We offer PhD scholarships, one, sometimes two a year, for those who want to go on to a PhD, a PhD in Islamic studies, I should say. For those who don't want to continue with the academic track, We do have funded internships up to about 9 months with ITREB or AKDN. So that can be a way of finding paths through Ismaili institutions. And we have this phenomenal alumni network, which is really quite special, I think. An extraordinarily globally connected group of people. There are, I think, getting on to 800 IES alumni around the world. And we have a mentoring scheme where we can put students in touch with alumni to help support their career progression. We have all sorts of opportunities for networking across the alumni network once you graduate. And we have research grants of up to £1,000 each to help you continue your professional development, especially in research, but in kind of related areas too, after you leave GPISH. So hopefully this gives you a bit of a sense of where you could go next and how we can help you with that. But I want to wrap up my bit here by highlighting some of the reasons I think the IES is a great place to study. The students can follow up with their own views, which may well be different. But first, you could hang out in this lovely rooftop garden that you see on this slide, which is, yes, top floor of our building in London, and it's kind of rather fabulous. But what I want to do here is give you a list over the top. These are what I would see as some of the highlights. And in no particular order, I'd say what's special about the IES is partly that all of our students are scholarship funded, covers your fees, your rent, your living expenses. Yes, it's not vast amounts of money, but it allows you to focus entirely on your studies for the time that you're here. I think one of the exciting things about this program is that you study a phenomenally wide range of subjects and disciplines. And so, yes, if you think that Islamic studies sounds like a very narrow field, just have a look at what the actual content of this program is. And I think you'll start to see that what you get is really is a really kind of fun mix. Thirdly, transferable skills for lifelong learning and employability. And I would link this to the humanities in general. People sometimes say that Islamic studies doesn't sound like a very useful thing to study. Go away and look up what people say online about the value of the humanities in general. And I would say that what you get out of this is not just an understanding of Muslim and Ismaili heritage, but also all sorts of really fundamental skills, thinking skills, communication skills, absolutely key. And I think an understanding of the way societies and cultures work in general, and ways of thinking, ways of solving problems around those that I think can be transferable to anything. So moving down this list, hands-on experience of research in the field, also other hands-on experience in the field, as I've mentioned earlier, is quite a unique aspect of this program, and it's all funded as part of the scholarship. All your flights and expenses are covered. Learn Arabic can be a huge opportunity. There are really not that many programs out there that allow you to get this far in Arabic, and also do all of this other stuff that you can do on this program. And even if you're less excited by the idea of studying the language, think of it as coming with cultural exposure to different Muslim cultures, and access to perspectives that you might not otherwise get. Practical point at the end of this list on the left-hand side is that you earn a master's from SOAS, which, as I said before, is a world leader in global cultural studies. That master's certificate is a valuable thing. and kind of adds, I think, to what we can give you at the IES. The SOAS brand has that more kind of global cachet beyond those who know of the IES itself. And the points on the right, the IES offers obviously unique expertise in Ismaili studies, but in broader Shi'i studies. No one else does this like we do. You get to study with an extraordinarily diverse faculty, a group of experts in these fields, Ismaili Shi'i studies and beyond, who are from all over the world, and representation of every Ismaili Jamaat among our faculty. And I think they form a really inclusive and supportive environment. I think the students will have to affirm that for you from their perspective. But what I see is a small community here that can offer you a hell of a lot more support than you're likely to get at a large institution where you disappear into the crowd. And I think you'll find that IES really, really genuinely works to include everyone. And on that point of scale being important, you have a large faculty for a very small number of students. The class sizes are for GPISH up to 11 students each year. And that enables the kind of discussion and critical debate, unpacking of issues that you just can't have in large lecture halls. And of course, those students are all Ismailis. You live and work with Ismailis from around the world, and I really think that's a huge part of the learning experience that I think the students will say a little bit more about from their perspective. And of course, you do this all in the heart of London. And I may be a bit biased here, but it's an exciting city with tons going on, and one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. And we have a fantastic new building with modern facilities right in the middle of the city. And last but not least, the alumni network I've already mentioned has active chapter groups in Asia, Europe, and North America, so that once you're a GPISH student, you're always a GPISH student in a sense. There's this global community that you can tap into to continue your learning and keep connecting with interesting people around the world. That's it from me. I'm going to pass over to, who wants to go first, Moes or Fatima?
Okay.
And for everyone's benefit, Moes is just starting his second year on GPISH, from India originally, and has been doing really well here. So I want to hear your perspective. And then we'll pass to Fatima, who is from Syria before she came to GPISH and has just finished the program, so she can reflect on the full length of the 2-year masters. But yeah, Moes, fire away.
Thank you, Dr. Henley. I think, first of all, I can just tell you about my journey first a little bit, and why did I apply to GPISH and what were my expectations. When I applied to GPISH, I had 3 things in mind. One was a desire to serve. The other was to acquire the knowledge or the skills to understand our communities in a deeper sense. And the third was to understand, receive lived in experiences with our brothers and sisters from different parts of the world within the community, right? And so I want to highlight 3 things that I feel differentiated GPISH from any other Islamic studies program, right? First one would be Victoria Halls. That's our student accommodation where we all live. It's a 5-minute walk from the Aga Khan Center where all our classes are. And for me, it is very special because for me, a lot of learning happens outside the class, right? In class, you might get some instigation or some thoughts, but outside is where you truly dive deep into stories. And through storytelling and through your peers is what you learn a lot from each other. So I would be learning about different like ritual traditions that might be part of the Syrian Jamaat or the Tajik Jamaat or the Afghan Jamaat that I might not have had an encounter with previously, right? So it amplifies the understanding by somebody's lived experience. And I think the access to having like different people from different parts of the world just within your own apartment is beautiful, right? Whether it might be things like listening to different music, trying different cuisines of food. I didn't like, for example, I didn't know much about North Pakistan, and now I know there are so many languages like Wakhi, Brushiski, Shina, that I would have never encountered and learned firsthand from my peers, right? So it's a lot of learning that goes outside. The second I wanted to highlight was your desire or your interaction with the community or the Jamaat itself, right? So when you're studying GPISH, you're learning a lot about your own faith, and it's also personal journey, right? About what you're learning. And it comes with some sense of expectations from what the Jamaat would want out of you. So I saw a question in the chat which had asked, how much time do you get as students to engage with the local Ismaili community in London, right? I think for me, it was important for me to be in touch with the community. But not only that, but how can we create a bridge between the students and the community so that we have some sense of continuity of service, right? Some sense of interaction. You might see that STEP students go in and teach in BAIs, and that might be their sort of direct interaction with the community. But for GPISH, it's a lot more flexible. You can have an interaction by volunteering in ITREB while you're here, could be your local ITREB back home or ITREB over here, and you can have a connection if you want to serve academically. You can go as an Ismaili volunteer within the physical space of the prayer hall and actually serve physically if that's how you'd feel connected. But what I want to say is you'll feel some sense of connection or some sense of connectivity within when you come to London. So you won't feel stranded, you won't feel alone. You will have a lot of different opportunities of support systems, right? You in the IIS, we have student services that will help you sort of understand the culture, the things that you can do and how you can feel at home. From a Jamaati point, there are also a lot of opportunities that you can connect with different members. So I would say like that sense of belonging is very strong over here. And for third, for me, GPISH, it's not only the content that you learn, but it's a personality that you adopt is almost what I want to say, right? Like every time now I read something, it's just not a text for me, right? Because it's so much more than just a text. You need to take yourself back to the context in which the text was written. And you ask yourself a lot of questions. Who wrote the text? Why did they write this in this particular time zone? What were other things that were going on at that particular time that enabled them or forced them to write this? Who commissioned this writing? Where is this coming from, right? So a lot of questions start coming into your mind, but a lot of thoughtful intellectual dialogue that's also happening, right? Which enables you to sort of go beyond just what's written and actually like think critically, right? And I know Fatima is gonna talk more about that, so I'll pass it on to her about it.
Thank you, Moes. You wanted to talk about Jordan too. Do you want me to talk first and then go back to Jordan, or do you want to continue?
Yeah, you can continue and then we
Okay.
can change voice.
Yeah. So hello everyone. I'm glad to see a good number of people interested in applying to GPISH. As Dr. Henley said, I'm from Syria originally, and I'm not going to bore you guys with why I came to GPISH because it's a lot of reasons, but one of them also to know about my own history as an Ismaili and to engage with Ismailis from around the world. So, as a fresh look at GPISH, I want to emphasize 2 points. One mentioned by Dr. Henley that it's a diverse program, it's an interdisciplinary program. We don't look at Islam as just history. We don't treat Islam as something happened years ago and that's it. We look at Islam from different lenses as something that is still alive, still getting into the everyday, into the daily life of people. So we look at Islam from cultural lens, we looked at the rituals, and you get to experience these cultural differences, as Moes said. It's not like we're only looking at it in class, but you also are living it in VH and in London. We looked at it socially. We look at philosophical aspects of Islam. We looked at Quran. So it wasn't just studying the history in this year this happened or in this year this happened. It's never like this. Even when we were studying history, we were actually thinking about it critically. We were deconstructing every aspect of the written text. We were deconstructing concepts and ideas that in most of our countries, certain concepts and ideas are a red flag. You cannot touch, you cannot discuss, you cannot even think about. You just inherit them generation by generation without even questioning. Why do we do this in a certain way? Why do we speak anything in a certain way? So in GPISH, you get to deconstruct everything. You get to understand how our identity came into formation as Ismailis among other Muslim communities. For me, classes discussions were informative. I really learned from discussions with my cohort mates. We were 11 people, sorry, from different countries. Each one is coming from a different background, and we were in the class discussing, looking at the, let's say, one concept from different lens. So for me, classes discussions are a very unique and informative aspects of GPISH. And I can say that because we are a small number of students in class, there is this room of discussing more. While in your class of, let's say, 30 students, you don't get, or like 40 students, you don't get the same opportunity to speak and express your ideas. I want also to focus on the critical aspects of things. So before coming to GPISH, I used to, I don't want to say take for granted some concepts, but I never thought about some concepts. I never thought about what does it mean to be an Ismaili, or what does it mean to be a minority, or what does it mean to be Shi'i. So in GPISH, I was able to question all these parts of my identity and understand them, and then discuss them with my friends and cohort mates. So after 2 years of studying, it's now a lifestyle, as Mars said. It's not just like, okay, I finished, I passed the module, khalas, it's done. No, it's not like this. You learn how to look at things in a different way. And I want to tell you this, like, you know, when you see memes on Instagram or Facebook, when you have this question marks around the head of the character, it's always gonna be there in GPISH. You're always gonna have question marks. When you answer one question, you learn to ask 10 other big questions. So it becomes a skill with you, and you can apply it in your work, in your daily life, in whatever you read, in whatever you communicate. So I'm grateful for the GPISH experience. It's challenging, so I encourage you to read the modules descriptions on the website carefully. Reach out to the alumni and ask questions, because you need to know what you're coming to study here. It's a life-changing experience for me, but at the same time, I knew that I was coming for this. I knew that I was coming to answer the questions and ask more questions. So I encourage you to read and reach out, but I also encourage you to apply. And that's it from my side.
Thanks so much, Fatima. Moes, did you want to jump back in to tell us something about learning Arabic and your time in Jordan?
Yeah, I just came back from Jordan about a month ago or so. I just wanted to highlight, like, as Fatima said, about the rigor of the program, right? But also understanding, like, you will get what you put in, if that makes sense, right? Like, I did not have any background of Arabic, did not know the script. I would recite my dua, but I wouldn't know the exact meanings. I would only know the meanings, but not the word, like the linguistic meaning behind it, right? So what I understood was when I started learning Arabic, it was not just a language, but a way of thinking, right? Because the depth of meaning that you would understand from concepts would be way more different than what you would just understand from a surface level translation of that, right? Because there's also loss of meaning in translation. So if anybody is afraid about learning a new language and how will that be, take it from me, who did not know the alif ba or anything of Arabic, to now be able to like converse with Fatima and joke around in Arabic, right? And I think that's my journey of Arabic. And another point, like Fatima said about perseverance, right? Like this program is rigorous. It will challenge you, but that's also the beauty of it. Because when you come out of this program, you can go anywhere in any sort of part of the world, in any institution, whatever it is that you want to do. But what you will always carry with you is that rigor, the sort of criticality, the way you think, and that will always be appreciated. Whether it is in a business setting, whether it is in a political setting, whether it is in a classroom setting, that will always be appreciated, respected, and looked up to, right? So take this program not only for the content of it, but the way the person that you'll become out of it, right? Like instead of thinking, what do you want to do? Think about who you want to be after coming out of this program, and through that drive your sort of application through it. And that's what I would say helped me think through GPISH.
Thanks so much, Moes and Fatima, for sharing your thoughts. Yeah, and you can help answer questions. We'll answer questions all together. So hopefully we'll hear more from you. Now, the last thing we want to do is just kind of flag next steps to everyone thinking about applying at this stage. And so we've got a few kind of key points here that that may be obvious, but just in case, worth reiterating. First, applications are now open. You can go and look at the application form and figure out exactly what you need, and that's worth doing really early because some of it requires lots of advanced planning, like IELTS English language tests and references and a writing sample and things like that. So much better to start early and see what you need now. Second, look through all of the other information on the website. I can't emphasize this enough. Know what you're getting yourself into. There's loads of information, including the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, is quite a good, there's quite a lot of info in there on how to prepare a strong application, on the kinds of things that we're looking for in applications. And third, I would say, go and read books, read academic stuff, but also kind of general non-fiction around Islamic studies, whatever you're interested in. That's personally, I think, the best way to figure out whether 2 years of academic Islamic studies is really going to be for you. There'll be a lot of reading to do. See if you're going to enjoy that reading. And also, whatever you read will give you things to talk about in your application and at your interview for GPISH. So you'll be able to talk about the kinds of things that you're interested in a bit more, more meaningfully. So those are kind of three general things you can go away and do. We can help you a bit more in 2 ways. Firstly, next Monday, we've got another webinar, which Rakiza and Kate, you're going to be running next Monday, aren't you? So same time, next Monday, join the webinar on how to apply, which will be going into the process and what you need for the application and explaining it and answering questions. So that's your chance to ask all the questions you have about the application process in particular. And we won't deal with those in this session. If you still have questions, you can get in touch with the admissions team, with Rakiza and Kate and their colleagues by email if you have specific questions about the process. But if you just want to understand more about the experience of doing GPISH, and if you feel like you need help with putting together a good application and preparing for that, then you can be connected with a GPISH alumnus. The information on this is on the website. There's an email address you can email, and I'd say where you are and that you'd like to be put in touch with a GPISH alum, and our alumni relations team will try to connect you with someone who can give you a bit of guidance and mentoring. And I think that can be a huge resource, especially if you're in a place where there aren't many GPISH alumni around, you don't know how to connect with people. We can help you with that. And I think those kind of that personal touch can make a big difference to help you figure out how to do this and what's best for you. So on that note, shall we move to questions? As I said, we won't take questions about the application process itself now, as there'll be a separate webinar about that. But anything you would like to ask us, we'll try to tackle. A few people have asked about the reduction of GPISH from 3 years to 2 years. And many of you out there may be aware, GPISH has in the past been a 3-year scholarship, and it involved 2 years of study at the IES, and then also a 1-year master's at another university in the UK. That's no longer going to be offered, I'm afraid. What the IES is offering from now on is just the 2-year master's at the IES. The reasons for that are basically, and this wasn't an easy decision, but a decision has been made to focus on what the IES does best, basically. I know that the idea of funding for an extra master's is very attractive to some people. I would point you to other scholarships. There are other places you can get scholarships to do other kinds of postgrad programs, including AKF, the Aga Khan Foundation, have a scholarship for Ismailis to do postgrad study. Look that up. If what you want to do is something else and not really, if your focus is not the Islamic studies, Ismaili studies, there are other scholarships you can find out there. This decision was made to offer the 2-year scholarship just for IES study, so that IES resources are going into the stuff that we can make work well, as well as we can. And there was one other consideration, is that originally this 3-year scholarship was put together because the IES couldn't offer a master's. It couldn't offer a kind of a recognized qualification like that. So until just the last few years, when we had this partnership with SOAS to award a master's certificate, the courses that students would take at the IES didn't give them a formally recognized qualification. So it was necessary to kind of attach a master's at another university. So there was that kind of practical need for the for that 3rd-year master's until now. Now you get the master's from us in partnership with SOAS. And so that bit wasn't kind of strictly necessary for those purposes. And I understand it will change the calculation for some people. So this might take some thought, but I would say, I would really encourage people to reach out and talk to alumni about their experiences at the IES, and yeah, to learn more about actually what it is that you get out of this Islamic studies program as a kind of Islamic humanities, something that is that I think can be of really broad relevance in whatever you go on to do. If people have more specific questions about that, I can try and answer them, but maybe that gives you a sense of why this decision has been taken. So what we now have available is this 2-year program. Will help you move on from there with internships, with the PhD scholarship, and after this master's at the IES, if you want to continue down an academic track, you'll be qualified to go straight on to a PhD, and that we can help with.
There's a question here about is there any restriction of what academic field you belong to? I assume this means with what qualifications they're coming with, which subjects they've studied.
Yeah, in principle not. So we have no requirement of a particular type of previous study. You just need to have a bachelor's degree that meets the kind of the qualification requirements, which you can find on the website. But in terms of academic field, no. In fact, we kind of want to bring together people with very different backgrounds, and that's part of the fun of these GPISH cohorts. I see Fatima nodding to that idea. I think, you know, you come together with people with very different experience, very different previous studies, very different kind of life and career ambitions, in order to learn from each other. That does mean that you'll have different strengths and weaknesses as you come into the program. And hopefully those work out complementary, and you learn from each other, and you can kind of help each other bridge the gaps. But I would recommend, especially if you don't have a background in the humanities or social sciences broadly, then go and do some reading to figure out whether you're actually going to enjoy that. If that is totally new to you, then it's all the more important to do some reading and exploration and talk to people about their experiences. Fatima, Moes, do you maybe want to say where you came from? What were your previous degrees?
I studied agriculture in Syria, but I was working with the international humanitarian organizations in Syria. So I took many trips around Syria. I have interacted with different Syrian communities, not only Ismailis. And that was my main drive to come to GPISH, to see how Islamic ideologies were used in the Syrian conflict, why I had to hide my identity. So I didn't study anything similar, but I was working in a different field that I connected with the experience of GPISH.
Yeah, yes. I mean, extremely different background in your case, but you're not untypical. I mean, you know that there were others in your cohort in a similar situation.
Yeah, we had fashion in our cohort, so
Yeah, that's true. So
yeah.
all sorts. Moes, you were a bit closer. You had a social science background, didn't you?
Yeah, I came from a social science background. I studied politics, philosophy, economics. It was interdisciplinary, but I didn't do any specialization or anything. So, and I worked in a university. So I was in like education and student affairs for about a year before I joined GPISH. But in my class, I have somebody who was a pharmacist, somebody who was a psychologist, somebody who worked in accounting and finance, somebody who's worked in like government, like public relations and government. So it's a very widespread. You can come from I think in my class I have more people from a science background than from a social science background, right? And so I think that contributes to the learning and enrichment, right? Because then there's not one particular way or procedure of thinking. So you can come from any background. You just need to have the passion, the willingness, and the ability to go through, you know, like what you're trying to do after GPISH, and how can you impact the Jamaat through what you're learning.
Thank you.
I think somebody was asking, how can you like, can you go to any country and pick any topic?
Yeah, I mean the funds are not unlimited, but there's but you get a little grant to cover some kind of basic expenses, and we pay for flights pretty much everywhere in the world. I mean, that list that I showed earlier included places like the US and Canada. People have done research.
Turkey, Belgium,
all over the place. So
yeah.
you know that there, for some people, they want to go, but you know, some people want to kind of take what they've studied on GPISH and go back to their home communities or kind of somewhere in their own country and apply that thinking and those skills to understand their, you know, kind of their own contexts better, and that can be really interesting. Others want to go somewhere totally different and use it as an opportunity to kind of bridge across cultures and get a very different kind of exposure, and you get different things out of them. Fatima, you've just done your research in Belgium this summer.
Yes.
How was the experience for you?
Amazing. It's not just that you're doing a dissertation, it's that actually you're learning from people. You get to meet people, you get to live the experience and learn from people. So it is, and I want to say it was a two-part question about the topic, like what to do and also what time, where to go. I'd say the topic depends on, like, if you have an idea from now and you want to apply it to GPISH, keep it, but you might change this idea after GPISH. Like, GPISH will open your eyes into so many different topics and so many different opportunities. So the topic will depend on your interests from the program. And there is always support from the faculty. There are always professors who have the open office policy where you can go and ask them and you'll get your help. So pretty much, yes, you can choose, I think, any idea and make it into a dissertation. From my cohort, we had really diverse topics, and all professors who heard our topics told us that this is really diverse topics.
There have been a couple of questions I've seen about the students admitted onto GPISH. One question was, you know, we kind of addressed this question of do you need a particular background? Do you need to have studied this kind of thing before or not? And the answer is no, you don't. But there is a question, does it make a difference? Basically, does it help to have a social science background? Or does previous knowledge of Islamic history, say, help? It can help, but actually, I'd just reiterate what I said before about the cohorts on GPISH being deliberately diverse. We don't need to fill a cohort with people who already have background, and actually, we'd quite like, you know, often you can learn, you know, students learn more from each other, I think, if they have quite different backgrounds. So yes, I mean, when we go through the admissions process of selecting candidates, to be honest, there's always a slight conundrum in mind. We want to take, on one hand, we want to take those who we're kind of confident will flourish most on the program. And if you already have some resources behind, you know, in your education to help you do that, we can be more confident in that. On the other hand, we're also trying to look for raw potential to develop in this field, even if you haven't done anything like it before. And we're looking to diversify the cohorts. So you're not disadvantaged if you don't have that kind of background, but it can help. It can help. There was a question somewhere about why do we take 11 students from around the world? And I assume that means why only 11? And I would say we cap the GPISH cohorts normally at 11, because of what Fatima and Moes said, I think both of them, about the value of these small groups. You can do so much more, I think, in a small group, and we really believe that those small class sizes make a huge difference for the richness of that experience on GPISH, and we don't want to dilute that too much by taking many more students, and we can give more individual support ultimately to smaller numbers of students. Having said that, when you come to the IES, as Moes talked about a fair bit, you're part of a larger student community. There are larger numbers of students on STEP. That's kind of up to 30 students a year. And we also share the same buildings as the Aga Khan University's ISMC, Institute for the Study of Muslim Civilizations. And I would say to all of you, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, also look at their master's program. They do some related things to us, and they share the same academic building and the same student hall. So you're part of a wider community of Ismaili students doing kind of related things, and that's quite valuable. But equally, we kind of want to keep GPISH small. But we really, really want these scholarships to support every Jamaat. And so we do try to balance, depending on the applications we get, we do try to make each cohort representative of various parts of the world. And that's feeds into the learning process, I think, partly, and also it's about how we're using these scholarships to build capacity in different parts of the world. We see these scholarships as an investment in individuals and in Jamaats. So hopefully that addresses a bit of that. What other questions have we got? There is a question. Okay, maybe because I just mentioned AKU, and there's a question. How is this program different from the AKU ISMC program? Aga Khan University's Institute for the Study of Muslim Civilizations has a master's program in Muslim societies and cultures, I think is the title. And there is definitely overlap. I think I would say I would see two differences. Fatima, Moes, you might, from knowing lots of ISMC students, you might have things you can add. I would see two differences. One is IES only takes Ismaili students, and so the point being that you can discuss issues in your communities and issues of faith and so on, without needing to worry about kind of outsiders, except the occasional people like me. But the idea is that faculty are not all Ismailis, many are Ismailis, but can be a mix, because our role is to facilitate these discussions between students. But that can affect that difference between the IES and ISMC can make a difference to the kind of discussions that are had in class. That's the idea. But also, if you look at the structure of the ISMC program, you do far fewer modules, and they're kind of focused in more niche areas, I would say. It's the design is different, such that on GPISH GPISH is deliberately designed to give you breadth, and it pushes you to do things that you might not initially think you're interested in. You might come in thinking that you really want to do this kind of stuff, but actually GPISH pushes you to try those things too. and to broaden your horizons, to try out different things, to get really kind of a wide angle view of Islamic societies and cultures. Whereas the ISMC approach is more to kind of dip in and explore particular areas in depth, but you don't get the same kind of overview. So you get different things from these two programs, basically, and it's worth having a look at them to see what suits you best. Do you think that's a reasonable explanation? Moes, Fatima, feel free to jump in if you have other ideas. Otherwise, we can maybe answer one or two more questions. That I think is asking, are applications currently open for all countries or only some countries?
They're open for everyone right now. Open for everyone.
Except that unfortunately we can't take applications at the moment from Tajikistan. So
if you're resident in Tajikistan.
So yeah, if you're resident in Tajikistan, then unfortunately, because of the political situation, we cannot take applications from there. If you are resident somewhere else in the world, then we would love for you to apply. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope this session has helped. This recording, as Rakiza said, will be online. And please do come to the session next Monday at the same time on the application process with Rakiza and Kate. Well, and I would suggest look at the application form, look at the details beforehand, and see if you have any questions. And they should be able to help you with those.